On today's episode of Let's Talk Dog Business, we've got the amazing Jo-Rosie Haffenden, and oh my goodness, this is one you are not going to want to miss. We've got controversy, we've got business, we are shedding the light on this industry. Hope you enjoy. Yeah, so you were saying then that obviously interesting time for you then with SOCs, as obviously you're kind of stepping away from that, which is, I suppose, I imagine it's a bit scary, but also super exciting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a very positive person in a very positive mindset. So I'm very excited about the future. I'm very excited about the transition from SOCs into doing what I'm going to be doing. But it's also sad and kind of, I think, you know, when we started SOCs, we wanted to change the game. I think we definitely did change the game.
Yeah,
I think we made huge leaps. You know, when we first started, there was no Absolute Dogs. When we first started, there was no, you know, the online stuff was teeny tiny. There certainly was no online behaviour stuff at all. And yeah, we did what we set out to do, which was to make a lot of money, which, you know, and anyone can look at Companies House and see that we have, and to change the game a little bit for dog trainers and allow for a lot more accessible education, which I think we definitely did as well. And I'm very proud of what we accomplished. But at the same time, these things happen. Life gives you lots of surprises, doesn't it? And
it absolutely does.
And sadly, you know, to be completely candid about it, when you go into business with your partner, you're always taking that massive risk. You're always taking that huge risk of, if it doesn't work out between you, then what happens? And at the time, you don't go into a relationship thinking it's going to break down, do you? So you go into it going, you know, we are strong as an ox. We've got a child. We've got a house. We've moved a country together. There's no way this is going to go wrong. Let's just go hell for leather. And so we hadn't really put in the things in place that we should have put in. And I'll never make that mistake again. And that's definitely advice that I'd give to anyone, that it doesn't matter if you're going into business with your best friend or, you know, your boyfriend or your husband or your mother. You know, you need to have those contracts in place. You need to have an exit plan and a full plan set out at the beginning when things are really, really good. Because otherwise, when you do split up or, you know, whatever happens, then you have to go through that whole rigmarole, which is very, very stressful, of deciding who stays in the company, who leaves the company, how does that work? And so I wish we'd done all of that before, which we hadn't. But that said, I think all the parties are really happy with how we've left it. So
yeah, lovely. No, I think there's actually some really good advice in that anyway, because obviously the purpose of this podcast and the way that we're trying to improve the industry is all about giving that information to people to go, you don't always see the behind the scenes stuff, do you? So regardless as to what business you're in, whether it's training, behaviour, education, grooming, whatever it is, whatever somebody's putting on social media is typically always like the nice stuff. You don't get to see the kind of all the work that goes into the background, all the shit that goes on behind building the business. And I think it is really important.
Yeah, but you know, I've thought a lot about this over the years. Obviously, I've got quite a big social media profile, and I'm always being stung on social media for controversy and all that kind of jazz. And so I've thought a lot about this, and I've gone in a circle with it. So for a long time, I agreed with what you're saying there. And I thought, you know what, nobody puts up the shit. Nobody puts up the fact that sometimes you don't want to go to work in the morning. Nobody puts up the fact that, you know, there's contracts and boring stuff to go on. And they should, and everybody should see the real life. But then now I look at it and I think, nah, you know what, like social media should be, and I try very, very hard. I'm sure this will come up later down when we talk about it a bit more, but I try very, very, very hard to stay in a positive mindset with social media and have lots of boundaries in place and lots of routines and lots of rules that I've set for myself about social media to prevent it from becoming something negative in my life. And actually, I think the fact that we don't post the negative stuff on there is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to sit there and scroll through reels of of negativity,
No.
of like the sad, like really social media should be a place where you share the positive stories and not the negative stories. Actually, I think that's right.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that. Because we're a big believer in that. It's that whole who you surround yourself with, what you surround yourself with, you'll ultimately become. And we tie because we're scrolling in these Facebook groups because, again, it's our mission to really try and help people. But it is hard, isn't it, when you're always just seeing, oh, this is difficult, this is difficult, this is difficult. And it's all this bitching and moaning.
It's kind of that victim mentality a lot of the time with any dog professionals, isn't it? They're like, oh, I can't do this or I can't do that, or I haven't got enough money to do this, haven't got enough time. And it's like, well, you can make it. You can change that if you really wanted to.
Do you know what I find really interesting? And this is an admission which isn't going to go down well, but you know me, I don't really care. And that is that since working a lot more with the balanced community as well as with the positive community, that is a positive community thing. It's not a balanced community thing.
Do you think?
The guys in the balanced community are out there in the mud training their dogs. I know that sounds like I'm being derogatory towards the positive guys, but I've found it very interesting because I've been running these seminars. I've been running like the 10 hacks seminars, and I've done probably 50% balanced community, 50% positive community. And I would say that the cohort of the positive community that I've had at my seminars, because it is a workshop and it is a practical workshop, tend to be the much more practical guys and tend to be more sportsy, agility, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But I would 1,000% say, like without a shred of a doubt, if I was to go and if I wanted to put up a team of practical dog trainers, those balanced guys, they don't make any excuses. They don't care if it's raining. They don't care if it's outside. They don't care if there's no toilet. They don't care if their dog is, they don't care if their dog is going to find it difficult and they're going to have to work through different things. There are no excuses. There are no excuses that out there they're training. And I would say that it's become a real culture with a certain part of the positive community now where it appears, like you said, there's a very victim mentality. There's always an excuse not to do something.
Why do you think that is then?
I think it's a lack of skill, I think that's something that I have to talk about, and I find it frustrating. Now, I'm not saying I think there's a lack of skill across the board in dog training, really, but I think certainly, I don't know when it started, but there at some point, and I can kind of remember when it was. I've been training for nearly 20 years now, and professionally, and I can kind of remember this kind of turnaround where stress became this real thing that we needed to avoid. When the dog showed us stress signals, we needed to avoid this. And at that point, there was this kind of merging between mild behavior cases and dog training. And there became this kind of real line drawn in the sand between trainers that would say, the dog is stressed, but I'm going to train them. And the ones that would say the dog is stressed and therefore he won't learn properly and I'm not going to train him. Now, of course, it's a gradient like all these things. And actually the skill in the job is to be able to say, I can see this dog is stressed, but I can still train him. Or I can see this dog is too stressed for me to train. And that's the skill. But there was the threshold for that has been pushed and pushed and pushed. Over the years, and suddenly if a dog is stressed, we have to give them the choice as to whether or not they train or not. Otherwise, you're not a positive trainer. And there became this real pushback, particularly on videos that were posted online, whereby, someone would post a video of themselves training a dog online, and then they'd have a absolute dialogue of people saying it licked its 1.37 seconds, it licked its lips and gave a whale eye. And then at 4.7 seconds, it pushed its ears back. And then at 7.9 seconds, it flagged its tail and moved backwards. And the stress became completely misrepresented as this thing that needed to be avoided, rather than, really when it comes to dog training, as far as I'm concerned, it's about recovery. So it's about whether or not the dog will recover and how quickly the dog will recover. And, you have certain dogs that recover very quickly, very well. You have certain dogs that don't recover very quickly and very well. And those two, in those two examples, the dog that recovers well, you could push through lots of stress. The dog that doesn't recover well, you wouldn't put through stress, even though they would show you the same stress levels. But with that dog, you'd say, no, we're going to push through it. And that dog would say, no, you wouldn't. You don't get all those you don't get all that context in videos, but people became very quick to judge that. And I think that really spiraled. It was the time when Gushy Stewart released the Backwork stuff, because there was this sudden Lily Chin, who's an illustrator. She became very fashionable.
Yeah.
All of that happened at the time. You suddenly got these charts of dog stress responses. All of this kind of all happened at the same time. And everyone suddenly jumped on this thing of like, stress is bad. We need to avoid stress. The dog needs distance. We need to move away. We shouldn't be training dogs when they're stressed. And I think the positive community then took this spiral. They threw a lot of babies out with bathwaters, and they suddenly started to go, if the dog is in any way highly emotional, we shouldn't be training it.
Yeah.
And I think as a result of that, then came the real extremists who believed that, who would then criticize everybody else if they posted videos of that. And that's where it all kind of became a wash.
Yeah.
And then I think at the same time, the university industry, the dog behaviourist as a thing suddenly really grew, particularly in the UK.
Yeah.
And as a result of that change in industry, we had a change of education system. And, you know, when I was starting out, you had Southampton, Lincoln had just started producing courses, but you had Southampton mainly in Hull that did the master's programs. And that was it. And then Edinburgh suddenly kicked up, and then Lincoln suddenly kicked up, and then a whole bunch of other universities suddenly kicked up these programs. And so then the academic side of animal behaviour just boomed. And then suddenly everyone was like, you have to have a degree, you have to have your university in order to call yourself a behaviourist. Everybody has to do that. So that I think then that contributed, because then people were spending the 3 or 4 years that they would have spent in industry were being spent in lecture halls.
Yeah.
And then they were coming out with more education, but a lot less practical experience. And that drove the wedge further, I think, between those people who were saying, this is why this is happening. This dog is stressed. I can see this, I can see this, I can see this, but couldn't really do anything to change that behavior, didn't really know the mechanics, didn't have the experience to do it. And those that said, I don't know all of that stuff about, you know, neuroplasticity and the amygdala and all that, but I can change this dog's behavior by doing this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. And I think that competitively, those things started to compete against one another rather than learn with each other and learn from each other. And as a result of that wedge, you have the people over here who are probably feeling defensive and insecure that they don't have the knowledge and the experience that these guys have. And therefore they come down very hard on, this is why I can't do it. This is why I can't do it. This is why I can't do it. And you have the people over here who are kind of like proving to those people, we might not have your university degree, but look, I can sure as hell train a dog. And they're doing the other thing, and they're going, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And I suppose there's a lot of parallels in that with how I personally think people run their businesses and they run their lives. So the things that were kind of running through my head when you were speaking then was, okay, those stress signals. And I know controversially, but I also know that you do actually, I think you agree with me on this as well. So I'm raising my 2 boys who are 2 and 4 the same way I look at dog training, because I understand the behaviour behind it, and I'm really looking at it and I'm going, oh, okay, yes, you have just shown me a stress signal whilst building your Lego, but does that mean we should stop building your Lego? No, but it's applying all of this stuff, and I see it certainly from a business point of view where it's almost as if somebody doesn't know what to do, or if they feel a little bit stressed by it, they stop. Yeah. And I wonder if, and I don't even know if you would know this, but as you've said, you know, you're choosing to spend a bit more time in, and I hate this split of communities, but you are choosing to spend more time in this balanced area.
But I'm not really choosing, I'm just doing a sport where I don't have a choice.
Well, Okay, so you're hanging out with those people more. Do you, from your opinion then, do you see a difference in how they run their business versus the other side?
Yeah, and I don't think that I think they graft a lot harder for a lot less money. If I'm honest, I think they do a lot more work, they see a lot more dogs, and they do it for a lot less.
Yeah,
and that's what that would be the main difference. But I would say they do it a lot less, probably a lot less formally, like the formal business side of things, in terms of, like, if I was to make a guess, again, I'm going to be slated for this, but if I was to make a guess, I would probably guess that a lot less of the balance guys are paying proper taxes, have got limited companies, are doing it like this, and a lot more of the positive guys are doing it by the book, you know, doing the business stuff by the book as it has to be done in this country. But these guys are putting in a hell of a lot less hours actually training dogs.
Yeah.
And this might sound controversial as well, but that's what
we're
all
here
about.
That's what we're here for.
Do you think the balance guys then are almost having to go against that judgment, and that's kind of where that drive comes from?
Yeah.
And also, do you think that they put themselves in, this whole, because a lot of what we're going to sort of cover and talk about and kind of push is that dog trainers are very led, or dog professionals, very led by what others do and the offerings of what others do. And they feel like they can't do any more than that or anything different from that. Do you feel like the balance community are more like advocates for what the owners need, what the dogs need, and they will just do what's according to that? Or do they feel the pressure of offering what others offer as well?
I think it's the same. I just think it's slightly different cultures. I think it's the same. I think dog training, if I'm honest, dog training, I think, is incredibly, business-wise, it's incredibly dated. It's incredibly dated. Mm-hmm. I think the way that it's presented, the way that it's done, all of it is so dated. It's like going back to an office in the 90s a lot of the time. I'm surprised we're not dealing with history forms by fax.
Fax machines. I was just about to say that,
But I think that the whole of the industry needs a shake-up when it comes to this sort of thing. The whole of the industry does. Yeah. I do think that, yes, I think both are led by these standard protocols. I think these guys are led much more by, like, the positive type trainer are generally led a lot more by the protocols that have been stipulated by things like the ABTC, and those things have all been fed down over time, because you have highly qualified professionals who are generally, again, I'll get stated, but it's true, generally not very good at training dogs, but who are highly qualified and very academic, who argue a great point on Facebook why you shouldn't do X, Y, and Z, and why you should only train a crate like this, and you should only do this by this. And people are like, oh, I respect him because he's Dr. So-and-so, and now I feel like an idiot and I should only do it that way. And there's a lot of fear in the positive community, a lot of fear, right? I think in the balance community, you have kind of a different pressure, and that you have the pressure of time, because there is the use of aversives in there. I think that this speaking, guys who are much further on this side tend to be a lot more pushed by time. So I need to be able to get this done quickly, because this is the type of trainers that we are, is that we fix quickly. Yeah. And therefore, I think that a lot of their protocols are designed as in a way that has to solve a problem as quickly as possible. And therefore, there are sort of traditional ways of doing things that they nearly all do as a result. And again, the offering is the same. So how can you offer, if you've got Jim down the road who's offering one-to-ones at 40 quid, I need to be offering my one-to-ones at 40 quid, because how can I compare to him? And if a one-to-one is an hour, then a one-to-one is an hour. If a class is an hour, then a class is an hour. If I do a residential package, which is $2,000 for a month, then a residential package is $2,000 for the month. And I can't, people, in terms of pricing, in terms of the time structure, in terms of all that stuff, nobody in either camp really thinks outside of the box. No. Not very many people do. There are I can think of exceptions to that rule, but generally not very many people will think outside of the box. They are massively guided by what others are doing around them, and by this weird industry social pressure to follow suit, to follow the herd.
Yeah, there is definitely that weird social pressure, isn't there?
In these Facebook groups, you see, if somebody says something that isn't the norm, whoosh, like they're just like a swarm of bees on them.
Welcome to my life.
No, it is, and I think you're right. I think it's so the dog industry, certainly from our perspective. So I feel like a little bit of a secret spy in one way, because I decided, how many years am I into it now? 2 years ago, to go, do you know what? I'm going to see more about this CPD world and see what's going on. So I would definitely put my hand up and go, I enjoy learning. I love doing all the course junkie stuff. I've done like lots of the SOCs stuff, loving Behaviour Bible. I like doing all of that stuff. And I thought, do you know what? I am going to start to test out some of these things. So I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and then officially made it my full-time gig 6-7 years ago. And I feel like we're all told the same kind of things, aren't we? I feel like the advice is quite blanket and I don't really know who we start to get business advice from, whether it's people that you kind of do your CPDs with, or you kind of just randomly get it from your social group. I don't feel like there's any kind of big player out there that you go, that's where I need to go to get this business advice. But I think it's fair to say we all kind of get told, partner up with vets, so you get your veterinary relationships going, partner up with local groups, so you get all those. But it's like, well, how do you do all of that? So then I've tried doing that, partnering up with vets, and then vets are like, oh, well, we don't really understand behaviour. So I know you need to be on the ABTC. I was like, okay, so how do I get on the ABTC? You ring the ABTC, they're like, you need to do an ABTC program. Like, what's the ABTC program then? And then you just constantly passed from pillar to post to do all of these things. So I thought, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to go and be a little spy. And I enrolled on a university degree to do animal behaviour and welfare so that I can go and get the clinical animal behaviourist title, not because I need it, but because I wanted to do this whole journey and see what it is actually like. And fuck my life, it is killing me off. Trying to do, because it's not the accredited course, I'm having to go in via APEL. I've got to fill in it's a 35-page document, for crying out loud. And I'm like, why do I need this when I know I can actually do a lot of this stuff? But I am trying to do it. And as part of my dissertation, this is going to be quite controversial as well, but I'm hoping to publish a paper that actually looks at the public's point of view on accreditation, because I think it is so...
Don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck.
They don't.
Spoiler alert.
And we all know this, don't we? And this is kind of like the problem for me. I was like, we've got all these big CPD providers at the moment, which dog trainers especially are constantly investing in, going, oh, I need to do that course, I need to do that, I need to do that, I need to do that, I need to do that. And
it comes from an insecurity because they don't know how to do.
Yes, exactly that. And that's kind of going to be my scientific purpose of investing this amount of money into studying and taking time away from my boys and the business and everything else. But for us, we're like, well, we invest heavily in our own personal development, in our business development, and our business is just growing year on year, doing the thing that we love. And that's not by constantly investing in dog knowledge CPD. It's all the same, pretty much. Let's face it. There's only so many ways you can skin a cat and go,
you know what, this is going to sound awful, this is going to sound awful, but a little secret that I've learned over my time, it's only dog training. We're not learning to be brain scientists. We're like, it's dog training. 9 of the cases out of 10 are simple. You overcomplicate it with your knowledge. The dog owners don't really want to know why. Like when I go to a dog owner, it's the same as when I drive my car to the garage. Oh, cars are a bit of a sore point for me. I wrote my van off last week. But when I drive my car to the garage, I take it in and he says to me, oh, I think it's the cam belt. And I say to him, in my mind, that's a sushi belt that goes around where I take food off of, but that's inside the car and gives it fuel. Yeah? That's what the cam belt is to me. And I'm like, oh no, the cam belt stopped dropping all its food around. The car's going to be starving. That's why it's broken.
I love that analogy. Wow, my husband's a mechanic. I'm going to tell him that.
I'm like, I don't care. I don't care how you fix it. I don't care what tools you. If he said to me, "Oi, come here," what? Come and have a look under the bonnet. I'll be like, no. You're like, no. Honestly, come and have a look. Right, you see that? I don't care. Like,
no,
sorry, mate. Give no shits. I don't care. Can you make it so that it's warm and that when I put the key in, it makes a noise again, and that I can go from this point to this point without putting too much fuel in it? That's what I want to know. Can I do that? Because if I do, then I love it. I love that car. I'll cuddle it. I'll take it to bed at night if I can. I love it. It's beautiful. If I can't, we're going to have an issue here. That's it. And I genuinely think, like, people say, yeah, but people do want to know why the dog is, because it's a sentient being. It's different from a car. Dog owners want their dog to be fixed. They want the behavior to change when it's a bad behavior, or they want the behavior to happen when it's just a behavior that's not happening. They want to live a nice life. They want to be able. Every dog owner, I would say, in the world wants the same things. And we don't like talking about it because they're things that we're not allowed to do. But secretly, especially the new generation of dog owners coming up now, all of them want the same thing. Ideally, in a perfect world, they want to be able to walk their dog through town on a really loose lead or even off lead if they can, right? That's what they want. I know we're not allowed to train it, but that's what they want.
Yeah.
They want that. They want to be able to down their dog outside of the shop so that they can go into the newsagent and get Rizzlers. Yeah, that's what they want. They want, they do. They want their dog to be friendly enough to people to say that it approaches them and says hello, but doesn't jump up at them. They don't want it to bark. They don't want it to dig, and they don't want it to counter surf. Right? Those are 3 things that they definitely don't want it to do. They want it to be social enough with dogs that it will have a little play, but not social enough that it pulls towards those other dogs.
Yeah.
They want it to not piss inside, and they want to be able to go to the cafe or to the pub and be able to say, and to be able to not have to say anything, and for the dog to understand that in that context, it lies down under the table and doesn't make a sound. Yeah. Those things, I would say 99% of dog owners, that's what they want out of a dog. Yeah, that's what those things in 99% of dogs are not difficult to train. No. So I'm raising a puppy for a friend of mine at the moment, or I'm helping to raise a puppy for a friend of mine at the moment, an English Bull Terrier. And my purpose on raising Dottie is to raise her into the perfect pet dog, right? So she's going to do all of those things. And those are the things that I'm going to focus on. Those are the, because essentially all the pet dogs are the same. Those are all of us, positive trainers, balance trainers, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Those things, everybody should be able to train those things really, really, really well. If all the dog trainers could train those things really, really, really well, then the need for CPD would diminish, and the desire for all this CPD, I think, would diminish significantly.
Yeah.
If I'm dead honest.
No, and I think you're right. And I think it's, so well, we're a big believer in that. You kind of always play to your strengths. And again, I think this is where certainly in the training and behaviour industry, and like who knows what to call yourselves nowadays. It's like, are you a behaviourist, are you a trainer, are you both, are you dog, whatever it is. But for me personally, I do have this genuine belief that a lot of people, regardless as to where they sit in whatever community, just as a nice general, we all love dogs, we all want to help people out. I think we all worry that there's not enough business out there for everybody to have. So we start to become this, almost like this general dog's body. And instead of actually looking at it from what do your clients want, what do the public want, and actually what are you good at in doing? So again, in my little like trial run, I decided to go, do you know what? I would put my hand up and say, I am not the best practical trainer out there. I know I'm not. There are much better people at it than me. But since I've immersed myself into academic world as my little spy thing, I'm going, do you know what? I'm pretty shit hot at all of the clever sounding stuff. So I'm going to change my business model to purposefully perceive, like from a public perception, that's what they're going to get from me. They think they're bringing in a psychologist to help them understand. And actually, it's worked really well for me because I've going, do you know what? I have actually been able to create a business for people that want to understand more about their dogs, and it's less about the doing. So I think
that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I think as long as the client knows what they're getting, I don't see a problem with that. If the client says, I want to know why my dog is doing this, they come to you. And you can go in and you can say, I can tell you why your dog is doing this.
Yep.
If they want to change their dog's behaviour or they want dog training, then they go to a dog trainer.
Yeah, exactly.
And the people who are going to do best at that are the people who are best at dog training.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it should be that way. And this is my biggest problem with regulation, and this is my biggest problem, particularly with institutions like the ABTC, is that there's no recognition of that.
No, exactly that. And I think it's the thing that really frustrates the hell out of me as well, because whichever camp again you're in, it's almost driven top down, isn't it? It's like, you should have all of this stuff. And it's like, well, again, for what purpose if we're not looking at it from the public point of view? Like, what is it that the public want? What is it that your clients want? Because yes, okay, you can keep investing in all of these different things, get all these badges, get all of these accreditations, but for what purpose if A, you don't know the type of business you want to be offering? It's like I say, I purposely chose to offer that model to see if it worked. And I was like, well, of course I know it's going to work because I've targeted the audience. And it should be the same for anybody going into this industry. If you only want to work with puppies of a certain breed, go out and say that you are the specialist in that breed for that age. But for some reason, we see it all the time, don't we? I think everybody feels like you have to go in and go, do you know what? I can teach, your separation anxiety, I can teach you down, I can do your training. Oh, that doesn't cover my bills enough, so now I've got to do walking. Now I've got to add in some, and it's suddenly you've got such a plethora of offers that I actually think it's quite confusing for the public.
You know what's interesting is that it's one of those things that I've done it subconsciously over time. There was no conscious decision to do it, but subconsciously over time, I've changed. I don't ever call myself an animal behaviourist now. Like I've got a postgrad in animal behaviour, but I always call myself a dog trainer. I'm embarrassed by the title behaviourist.
Interesting.
I'm embarrassed. I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Because to me, when someone tells me that they're an animal behaviourist, I think to myself, all right, so okay, let's see what you can do. That's my first thought, is that it is like let's see if you can actually modify behaviour. If you're an animal behaviourist, you should be able to modify behaviour. Let me see if you can modify behaviour, because 90% of the time when you call yourself an animal behaviourist, it's just code for I can't train a dog, I can't modify behaviour. I can tell you why the dog's doing it, but that's where I end. And I think the problem is that there's a disproportionate. I think it's partly the fault of universities, and it's partly the fault of institutions like ABTC. But now there is a much larger cohort of like little scientists who are very good at science and very good at understanding, analysing papers, who are very good at analysing information, very good at looking at why dogs do things, and very good at coming up with reasons why we shouldn't train things, but that can't train a dog. And I think that there is a need for those people, but I think that the need for them is much, 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 much smaller than the amount of them. And I think there is a massive need for dog trainers. Yeah. And I think that sadly, because those people, the people who are doing your job, aren't marketing themselves the way you're marketing yourself. They're marketing themselves as people who do modify and change behaviour. Yeah. And that do dog training. It means that it pulls down the standard of the whole industry, because the whole industry is then, and you know, the amount of dog owners I probably speak to 20 dog trainers a day, dog owners a day, or on average, like just responding to messages and things like that. And the sheer volume of them that have had to see 4 or 5 trainers before they found a trainer that can train their dog is mind blowing.
Yeah, we have that.
That's mind blowing.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think there's a lot of crossover here between the ability, like you say, of that person who they're going to, but then also the offering of that trainer. So I've known some amazing trainers in all walks of life, but because they haven't looked at themselves as a business owner and offered an actual service, and it's been very ad hoc, knowing what we know about human behaviour, well, people they kind of like shop around a bit. So then you end up with, you're going to all of these different people. Whereas actually from a business point of view, if you was to offer a full service, however that looks, but package it up properly so that that person is buying the result, not just an hour of your time, I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think there's so many models that are not utilised very well. Yeah, you know, like if like there are so many models. I think that we should be I think the marketing of what we do should be solution based. I know that people don't like that, because people say, well, you know, it shouldn't be about a fix it and what's fixing it for this dog and that dog. And like we do have to go into the house. We do have to establish goals. We do have to establish what are realistic goals for that dog and for that family, and etc. etc. I'm not. Of course, we have to do that. However, I do think that the whole marketing and the whole selling out should be what can I, you know, when you're selling to your client, what you need to offer is, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? And you need to make sure that you can do what you're saying that you can do for them. Yeah. And you need to, like, people put out these very, very generic businesses with these very generic offerings, when actually you'd be so much more sensible to have a look at what do I want my day to look like every day. When I wake up in the morning, I want to be passionate about what I'm doing, because that's how I'm going to be better at doing it. I want to enjoy what I'm doing, because that's how I'm going to be better at doing it. And I want to be good at what I'm doing, because that's, you know, that's the point of it. And therefore, I think that those questions need to be answered. People need to be thinking about that before they offer anything to their client. They need to have a real hard think about, what do I want to offer? What am I good at? What do I love? What do I want my day to look like? Okay, so now I know that. Now I can think, in putting all of those things together, what can I offer? What solutions can I offer for my clients? Now I market my business based on the solutions that I can offer for my client, doing the things that I want to do.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think anybody does that. I think instead people just go, dog training business, therefore I need either a barn or a field with a bunch of agility equipment in it. I need to be able to offer puppy classes, adolescent classes, adult classes, follow-on classes. I need to be offering one-to-one training, and then I need to be offering 2 to 3 hour behaviour consultations. That's what people offer. And that standard dated package is also shit.
Yeah.
Just shit. Like the classes are too long, they're too structured, the dogs aren't getting what they need. The classes, in my opinion, shouldn't even be held in halls or in venues. The classes should be held out and about in public spaces.
Yeah.
The behaviour consults don't have any follow-up because people buy a consult at a time instead of a full package. And if you buy a consult at a time, then normally you go in and the initial assessment should just be assessment. It should just be an hour of an assessment, and then a plan should be made, and a cost should be given to that plan, like getting a quote for getting a house built. Not it shouldn't be generic and cookie cutter. And then, you know, the one-to-one time, like an hour one-to-one is good if you're teaching the owner to train the dog, but that should be stipulated. Like, what does the owner want? Does the owner want to learn to train the dog? If the owner wants to learn to train the dog, in my first hour one-to-one with an owner wanting to learn to train a dog, I'm going to get Blake out. He's my schoolmaster. You're not even going to bring your dog. If I'm going to do one-to-ones with you and teach you how to train your dog, I'm going to start you off on a schoolmaster, teach you the mechanics, teach you to do it on a dog that already knows how to do it. Then we'll get your dog out and we'll start doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
You know, but normally 9 times out of 10, they don't want to learn how to train their dog. They want their dog to be trained, in which case take the bloody dog, use the last 10 years of experience of learning the mechanics and doing all the CPD, train the dog for them and give it back, either on a residential or a take and train, or you're at work and I'm going to train your dog for you. There are so many ways to do this. There's so many really good ways to do this.
Yeah.
And they're just not being utilized because people, I think people are too scared.
Yeah,
it does come from a place of fear, doesn't it? Like we talk a lot about coming back to the trainer versus behaviourist slant there, like the report writing kind of. Yeah. So I don't know how you feel about this. Well, I'm guessing I do know how you feel about this, but like
you can imagine, as someone with ADHD, you can imagine how I feel about report writing.
Well, you know, this person comes in, they observe the dog, they write their observations on reams and reams and reams of, you know, pages, and the practical exercises are like that.
Yeah.
And
there's
the
like
rest
minuscule.
Is this. And I just they don't need to know all of that stuff. They know what the behaviours their dogs are doing. They've like told you what they are and you've observed them. So why do we need to just labour on all of that? Why don't we just go bang, 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 this is what you need to do?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, so it really frustrates
This is a
us.
big part of like that behaviourist stuff that I am being told to do, which I don't do, by the way. Like, you need to get these reports to vets. And you speak to vets and like, we don't read them anyway. I was like,
read them.
What's the point in writing all this stuff then?
That doesn't give a fuck. They don't care. They're like, am I putting this dog to sleep? No, good. Is it going to bite me? Probably. All right, muzzle it. That's it. Done. Job done.
I'm also a canine massage therapist and I have to do vet reports for that. And people spend hours on these vet reports and they don't read them. It's the same. So just all they want is really simple bullet points that they can just look at that dog's notes and go, this is the...
Fridge.
Yeah.
Fridge, right? To me, I reckon instead of buying reams of paper and a printer, people should buy, you know, the white magnet boarding, right? They should just buy a ton of sheets of that.
Yeah.
And a bunch of them pens, and that's the reports. That's what you write your reports on.
Agreed.
And that goes in the client's fridge. That's it. You don't have any. That's it. That goes in the client's fridge.
Because you can count the amount of clients that are actually going to read that and actually going to, you know, understand it, take it in, apply it. They're just not going to.
I actually did a fridge report yesterday.
Even if they did read it, even if they did understand it, even if they did like what then what?
Yeah.
So they've read it, they've read the report, and they've read, what difference has that made?
What practical things do they need to do? That's all they need is do this, do the next thing, do the next thing.
Yeah.
But we know this about education as well. We know that reading a report is like there's hardly anybody who can learn it in that way. You can sit down and read a report and learn it. Like that's just not like, we know that people learn much better visually. People might learn significantly better when they're outside of their own environment with people. I know for a start that if I took my client for a coffee for 30 minutes and I told them the stuff that was going in that report, they would learn that better than if I wrote it down.
Absolutely.
So why aren't I doing that?
Yeah.
Because that's way more enjoyable.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do.
Sitting down in front of the computer, just go, right, I'm going to meet you for coffee at this address, and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about what, like, the assessment and all that kind of stuff. Bring your pad if you want to make any notes. Done. Job done.
Yep. And that's it. And I think this is where a lot of it, you see it all over social media, don't you? I think one of the big things that certainly in this profession, everybody is or either you see it at some point, they're going like, I've just fallen out of love with it. I don't enjoy it anymore. And I was like, well, yeah, because again, you're not
make it boring for yourself.
Yeah. It's like, you're not treating it like a business. Really, you're trying to do everything for everyone. You're not thinking about what the client wants. You're thinking about what your competitor's doing. And instead of actually, why don't you just start collaborating? It's certainly how like Vic and I met, and we were like, do you know what? How can we work together? And now we've got this amazing opportunity in front of us, and we're rolling with it because we spoke to each other in the same territory.
Yeah, but low tide, at least you're the same type of trainer. Like one of my best friends, Belle, who I love working with it. She's a balance trainer. So it's really hard because I'd like to, it makes it much harder just if you don't train the same way. You have to, it's a minefield out there. But I do also think, and I know that we're not going to talk about methods and stuff because I don't think it's conducive to anything particularly productive. But I do also think that behavior as a industry, the lack of, I think that we're taught very, very ineffective models for behavior change, if I'm honest. Not just ineffective, but boring and ineffective. So we're generally taught counter condition and desensitize everything. In different ways, like there's different structures, there's different marketing models for it. But it's all much of a muchness. It's all basically counter condition and desensitization in its various different forms. Yeah. And not particularly effectively, way under threshold, right? And the problem with that, and I actually think this is what is responsible for a lot of the mental health issues in behaviourism industry and a lot of people dropping out and falling out of love with it, is because I think that we're taught, I think that there's kind of this idea that's pushed on us, which is if you are good enough at those, you will change behaviour. Yeah. Yep. If you're good enough at marking the dog and giving it distance when it gives appeasement gestures to the other dog, and getting closer and closer and closer and slowly habituating that dog and creating positive association between that dog and that dog, then that dog aggression will go away. And we're taught, but I feel like if I'm completely honest, which I have no reason not to be these days at all, is that if you've got a pink pen and we're taught if you colour hard enough with that pink pen, it's going to go blue. It's going to go blue. You're going to keep colouring it and it's going to go blue. And all these behaviourists are out there doing it. And they go, I've been training this dog for 6 months and I can only just about get it. And sometimes I get it in the room and it still barks at the other dogs and blah, 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 blah. But they're thinking, but everybody's told me if I keep colouring with this, it's going to go blue, and it still hasn't gone blue. So I must just be really shit at colouring. Yeah. And behind the scenes, the vast majority of the people who are teaching that, they've got a blue pen and they just go in and get the blue pen.
Yeah, I love it. It's so right though,
and
isn't
they're
it?
like this, and they're like this. They're like, ta-da, look, there's there it is, it's blue. And I did that with pink. I did that with the pink pen. I just coloured hard enough and it went blue. And there you go, look, now my dog doesn't bark. Or now my dog isn't, now my dog is good around other dogs. And I'm like, did you though? Because I don't think you did use those methods. I think you used a whole bunch of other methods. I think you used a whole bunch of mechanical, different mechanics. I think that you used, I think you pushed your dog through a lot of stress. I've been with some of the most famous trainers, arguably via the figures, some of the most famous trainers in the world as positive trainers, whilst they've corrected their dog on a beach for chasing a seagull. I've sat next to trainers who are known for being incredibly positive, whilst they've shouted at their dog to shut up. I've gone, I've watched a trainer who gives workshops all the time about positive training, who uses a garrote on his own dog. And I think that there is this, for me, it's very, very frustrating, because I think when it comes to the use of aversives, there's a continuum. And I think there are so many things that need to be put into consideration, including like the robustness of the dog and the recovery rates of the dog, and what the dog finds aversive and what the dog doesn't find aversive. Yeah. Certainly verbal corrections is something that I'm incredibly comfortable using. I use verbal corrections with my own dogs. I'll say, "Oi, stop it. Stop being a complete twat. You're a prick." And my dog will go, "Ooh, I'm sorry." And I'm like, "Yeah, thank you." and that is slightly aversive to my dog, as in my dog's ears will drop and he'll go, "Oh, sorry." And I'll go, "Yeah, right. Well, then don't be a prick." And I don't have any problem with doing that. The same way I won't use the same language for my son, but I would say, "Oi, Santino, don't do that anymore." And I don't see any problem with that. And if he didn't find it aversive, then he would continue that behavior. So he must find it aversive, because it stops him doing it. My change of behavior, my sudden change of behavior, will tell him not to do it. If I'm working on a dog aggression case, and I teach a dog really, really well-proofed constructive behavior that he can do around non-emotional triggers that he's happy with, and I take that dog to threshold for the first time, and he reacts at the other dog, and I believe that reaction isn't based on fear, but is based on habit and the fact that it's worked in the past, and so the dog's become a bit more offensive and a bit more bold in it. I have no problem saying to that dog, "Oi, no," and then immediately rewarding the dog for the right behavior again. Right? And that's how I create very quick behavior change. Right. And that's how I can change the client's behavior very, very quickly, by using that. And I know that I will be slated for doing that, because, you know, people will say that that's using aversives in behavior modification. But I don't think that it's particularly aversive to the dog. I don't think that it is in any way, I don't think there will be no backlash from that. In the hundreds of cases that I've used that method, I've never seen any backlash from it, in terms of, in terms of punishment callous, in terms of the dogs then redirecting on the owners, in terms of a relationship breakdown. If anything, the dogs enjoy the structure and respect the owner more afterwards. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that so many people are being taught that they can colour in hard enough with a pink pen that it's going to turn blue. And there's people like me who are out there using the blue pen on dogs in a way that's constructive, feeling like I can't teach that to people because it's controversial.
Do you know, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because it shouldn't be controversial in some way, should it? Because ultimately, even if you look at it from like you say, that parenting style of it, and I like to think that, you know, if I had to put myself into a camp, I'm definitely in that position. But yeah, okay, I will use those. No. And I've realised lately, I do the pointy finger at the kids. It's like, no.
Oi. Yeah, I do that too. Do you do the counting as well? I'll give you to the count of 3. I don't know what happens after 3.
No, for that reason, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it, because I know mine are little, they're clever little shits. And I'm like, yeah, you get to 3, see what happens. I'm like, fuck. So no, I'm avoiding. So far, I've managed to avoid it. But yeah, like
I use 3 all the time. I will count to 3.
But it is part and parcel of life. We do use these things.
We all have these things, don't we? Like, again, like if we're all talking over each other now, like, and no one was getting anywhere, someone's going to have to step up and just be like, "Oi, shut up a minute, I'm trying to talk." You have to use it as part and parcel. But I just love that whole, you can keep trying that pink pen, keep trying it, which is what I see people do from that business point all the time. They're going, well, I'm just going to keep trying this. I'm just going to keep offering ad hoc sessions. If that's not working, I'm going to try another version of a pink pen, and I'll put some walking in. And then that's not working, and then I'll put another version in.
People will come eventually, is the kind of attitude, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm like, well, do you know what? It's clearly not working. And I had a very similar conversation to a training client yesterday. And he's the person, the owner, he's not changing his behavior. And I was like, you've got to change the formula. You know, that Excel spreadsheet you're in all the time, you keep putting that same formula in, it's not going to give you a different answer. You've got to start changing you a little bit, change it slightly, and you'll get a different output. And it's the same with business. It's like, well, that's not working, so go and try something else. And I think for me, because my background is business, that is what infuriates me the most about this industry. It's where the hell do you go? So I've built my business and then your business and our business, and we've gone from not in our industry, we've had to go elsewhere to get it. Yeah. And that's what I think is missing, because then ultimately you've now got a plethora of all of these dog professionals doing the same thing, moaning about the same thing, feeling frustrated about the same things, falling out of love with the same things, but they're going to each other to get the support.
And it's not, it's not just that as well. I think that there are enough people out there, particularly higher professionals, who are constructing reality where they're saying that the pink pen works.
Mm-hmm.
The pink pen works. And so there's a belief, there's a full-hearted belief, the pink pen always works. And so the people who are out there grafting with the pink pen, not just methodologically, also, like you say, with business structure and with, everything really in the industry. They're using like this early 90s model, but for everything, in terms of everything. And then they're going, it's the year 2024, but it's not working. But this lady says that it does work, and this lady, and she's really high up, and she's made loads of money from it, and she says it works, and therefore it must work. And so I'm going to keep trying and keep trying. And I think that is responsible for a lot of the imposter syndrome. I think it's responsible for a lot of the mental health. I think it's responsible for a lot of the burnout, because there's only so much. If you believe that it's possible to make a decent salary, having constructed your business and having your communication protocols and all of that in a certain type of way, and you think that there are a lot of other people who are successfully doing that, and you think that it's possible to make all this behavior change and train all these dogs in this very particular way, and you think that everybody else is being very, very successful doing this, and then you're not, it makes you feel like shit.
It's so true. It's so true.
But the organisations are like, they're there as this, we look up to those organisations, don't we?
Don't know why. Why do
we?
Does anyone look up
who
to
says
them?
that that's what we need to do? No, we don't. But you
can see it's out there.
I think we take bits out of it, but ultimately they're the ones that are driving this, and they're the ones that, like, the client-led focus comes from them. Like, it's the lack of client-led focus, comes from them as well, because it's not about them. It's not about the clients. So these organisations, they are like the gods of everything, aren't they? But they're not providing what we actually as dog trainers need.
So I have a lot of problems. I have a lot of problems with this for all of the organisations. I think I can't think of an exception to this, which is, they are being ran by people who the last time they trained a dog was the 1940s, I think, most of them, right? And therefore, it's not surprising that the models that they're putting across are dated, right? And the vast majority of them are like, I want to say, this is an open invitation to anybody who works for any of those big institutions that run accreditation. Come to my house, right? I live in Cambridgeshire, got 4 dogs, come training. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at training. Let's have a look at whether or not you can train a dog, which ultimately is the entry level, is the bottom, the very bottom, the first things first, before you're educating people, before you're telling people what education they need in order to do that, in terms of, can you do it?
Yeah.
That's first things first, right? Can you train a dog? That's the first one. Because if you can't, then who are you to tell Joe over there what he needs to be able to do that?
Yeah, precisely.
Like full stop. Now, secondly, show me your protocols for a behaviour consultation. Let me go and grab your client. Let's have a little look at what you would do. What would you do? And would the client be happy with that?
Yeah.
And does it give effective modification and change in a sufficient amount of time that is ethical?
Yeah.
Right. Because I would argue that the vast majority of the people in that couldn't do any of that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I actually had a conversation with do you know when I did my APDT assessment, they wouldn't let me in because my business model scared them. They were like, people want to pay you more than like £5 an hour. I was like, yeah, shock horror, they do. And they were like, and they just couldn't wrap their heads around it. And I was like, okay, then fine. So, and because I didn't meet the criteria that they wanted, which was essentially chucking a load of dogs in a room that didn't know each other, and they wanted me to fuss them all and interact with them. They all got to interact with each other. I was like, oh, sorry, I'm not going to do that. I don't know anybody here. I don't know this setup. I'm just not going to do it. And that's why they wouldn't let me in.
And you didn't have a load of props either.
And I didn't have a load of props.
Oh, how dare you? Right. The thing is that it's very much, there's a mentality from that upper echelon up there. Mm-hmm. There's a real mentality of this is why you can't. And you get those builders that come into your house and you go, right, so what I want to do, right? You're going to hate this, but what I want to do is I want a window and I want it to be the full height of the house, right? I want it to go from there. I want it to go all the way down. I know there's a floor in the middle, but I want it to go all the way down in the corner like this. And they go,
yeah.
Well, I'll tell you why you can't do that. Right. And there's that mentality instead of the mentality of when you occasionally get a builder who goes, oh, how can we do that?
Yeah, love that.
And it should always be, how can we?
Love that. It shouldn't
be, this is why we can't.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you know, like I remember the first time that I postulated, or I said about doing, I said, right, we're changing. It's when I used to run my business, my consultation, my dog training business. And I remember saying to the staff, right, we're changing the classes. Yeah. And we're going to do, what we used to do is we used to do 6 weeks. 5 of the weeks were in a hall. 1 of the weeks was in a field as a recall thingy at the end, workshop. And then we used to do 3 additional sessions that the client could choose to book on, which were the venue list sessions. So they'd do an urban one, a rural one, and a public transport one. And they could choose to do it, and they'd meet us in various places, and then we'd go and take the puppies out. Right. And I said, we're going to scrap the in the hall classes. Like, I think we should just run all of them out and about. I think we should be training the sits and the downs and the loose leads and all the stuff that we're training. I don't see the point of us training it in the hall. And the dogs, when I see them out and about, they're not really generalizing it. Yeah. It's such a specific training context. It's difficult for them to concentrate. It's difficult for them to do anything in really. Thank you. Can I see the menu as well, please? Yeah. So I said, like, we're going to do, and people hated it at the start. With not the clients. The clients fucking loved it. The first problem I was met with, well, your insurance won't cover you. And I was like, no, the answer shouldn't be your insurance won't cover you. The answer should be, what loopholes can we use to ensure that the insurance is still covering you? Can we get the clients to sign a declaration to say that they don't mind? Because that was the answer. The answer was to make sure that on the puppy forms, they signed a thing to say, we know that we're going to be out and about in public and you can't basically control the buses. And but that's like, we should always be looking for like, how can we do this? Yeah. How can we do this?
Yeah.
Always. Like, there should never be in a situation where you say, well, I can't. No. How can you?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I feel like this could go on like a massive tangent because of life in general. Like you almost, you're so guided, aren't you, into what everything should be done. Like we're almost, again, like even we've had people contact us and say like, oh, we want to become dog trainers. How can we start doing that? And they're already saying to us, it's like, oh, so we know that we're going to run one-to-ones or puppy classes. We found a hall, we've done, and it's like you say, it's like this whole cookie cutter thing, but it's so ingrained and hardwired into everybody, not even just in the dog world, but.
And it's dated and boring and the clients don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true.
The other thing that I'm seeing a lot, this is a very good coffee, by the way. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot of lately is so the new generation coming up, the guys, when we look at, dog ownership went from something like 9 million to like 13 million over COVID, didn't it?
Yeah.
When we look at who the people were who bought those dogs, they were often people like younger than me, if I'm honest, but like fairly similar to me. Like they're just normal people, normal people in normal lives. People who like to have. I'm going to make a complete admission here, right? I have cream carpets in my house.
Impressive.
And I have white bed linen, right? And as you'll see on my social media, I often wear white Hugo Boss tracksuits and cream. I like my designer clothes. I like my Ugg boots, which got fur around the collar.
Love it.
Even in Spain.
I don't even in Spain, right? And I don't care. I like those things. Those are the things. That's who I am, right? And a lot of the people, I think that the general cohort that bought dogs are quite similar to me in that sense. And the generation below who are coming up and buying dogs. And what I'm seeing all the fucking time at the moment is people whinging and saying, you need to let the dog be a dog. Yeah. So you're seeing all this stuff about you need to. I had a client today. God, you poor thing. I had a client today who's got a dachshund and the thing's digging up the garden. Oh, they've got a dachshund, of course it's going to dig up the garden. And you've got to let the dog be and I'm like, what the fuck? No, you can't let the dog dig up the garden. That's not socially appropriate. Like the only way that dogs have managed to thrive in this environment is by learning to behave appropriately given the expectations of the humans, right? That's how dogs are still with us. That's why they're still our pets. That's why we haven't chucked them out and they're not like foxes, right? Because we it is literally literally the reason that dog training exists is for that purpose.
Yeah.
That's literally what dog training is teaching the dogs to live under the human rules. Yeah. That's what dog training is. So why people are now moaning about that is beyond me. And there's nothing unrealistic about there's nothing unrealistic about having white linen and white tracksuits and clean carpets and having dogs. But there's nothing that's not an unrealistic expectation. You just have to fucking train the buggers. You just have to make sure you train them. That's all it is. You train them and you say to them, right, you're not allowed upstairs. My dogs aren't allowed upstairs. Ella is. She's 16. She can do what she wants. But none of the others are. The others aren't allowed upstairs, right? And they're only allowed in the lounge when they're clean and calm, because I've got a big white fluffy rug in there. And if they're silly, then they'll just annihilate it. And we are in the kitchen otherwise, and they know that they're not allowed to jump up at visitors. They know that they're not allowed to jump up at me because I wear things like white tracksuits. And they like all these things. It's just a basic dog training, right? It's just a basic domestic obedience and manners. And I don't know how it's happened, but there's suddenly this massive culture of dog trainers who feel like it's, if you have a dog, then you should live as a swamp person, and if you don't, then you've got ridiculously high expectations of that dog, and it's completely unfair to expect the dog to live this lifestyle. But and I just think I don't know where I feel like a lot of that is coming from these institutions who are like really, really pushing this idea of allowing the dogs to be the dogs and not allowing the dogs to have any big emotions, and keeping arousal down and keeping stress down, and not putting the dogs in just basically any situation. And like we're creating these weird ass glass dogs that are dog trainers' dogs. If I ran a workshop tomorrow and allowed all dog owners and all dog trainers to go in there, I can almost bet your bottom dollar that the vast majority of dog owners will have better behaved dogs than the dog trainers, which is fucking saying something.
Yeah.
That's where you've got a problem.
Yeah.
When your dog trainers are going, I can't bring my dog in the hall because he's a bit stressed. I'm going to wait for him to choose to come in the hall and he's barking at the other dogs. And all the dog owners are going, oh, fucking come in here, Fido. And the Fido's going, okay.
Yeah.
So it comes down to the extremes, doesn't it? Like there's no middle ground with anything to do with this industry, is there? There's like you're here or you're here, and there's nothing meeting in the middle.
I think there is. I think there's some beautiful people in the middle ground. It's just that those are the people who are going, I don't know what the fuck to call myself. I'm not going to put myself on social media because I'm going to be annihilated.
I think it's that vanilla middle ground, isn't it? Of like, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to put myself out. And I think this is the shame, because ultimately anything that's controversial should just be something that is an open conversation, because ultimately how do you learn? How are you supposed to have these conversations and do all of these things? And that's why, we decided to do this podcast, which we knew was going to be controversial, because we're going to start highlighting the things that we're already bloody saying. We're all doing it. We're all saying it.
That's the whole point of why we created this business, because we think that things have got to change.
Yeah.
And we really want
something has got to change. So I suppose I'm really interested, and I think our listeners will be too, on kind of like your journey then from when you first started to kind of where you are now, because you've done the academic side of it, you've got the degree, you've obviously had like a massive online business with SOCs, you've had your training business, and you've done some TV stuff as well. So kind of talk us through where you've started and to where you are now, and what has kind of changed for you, and what have you seen, and how have you grown, and tell us the Jo-Rosie story.
So I am a big believer in the like laws of attraction and things like that. Manifest and it will come. And as a result of that, I think Steve Jobs once wrote a beautiful quote that I've always remembered, which is, it's really easy to join the dots looking backwards. Right. And that's true, especially when you follow your passions and you follow what you're good at and things like that. And when I tell this story, it looks as though I pre-designed it. It looks as though I knew exactly what I wanted to do from when I was 17 and worked very carefully through that course to ensure that I had everything I needed. And couldn't be further from the truth. Couldn't be further from the truth. So I went to university, and my mum had told me that the only way that I could ever make any money doing anything with animals was to be a vet, which is...
I had exactly the same advice.
How old are you? Sorry if you don't mind me asking.
42.
Okay, yeah, I'm 39, and I think that at that time, around that, I think that there was like this real belief, because there wasn't really an industry for what we do, was there, back then?
No.
So I think there was this belief that you become a racehorse vet, that's how you make a million, or you can make decent money being a vet, or you're going to be, or you're unemployed, basically. So that was the advice I was given when I did my work experience for my GCSEs. I then went on to university, and my mum gave me really, really good advice, the best advice I was ever given in my whole life, which is, if you follow what you're passionate about, then things will be all right. Like, basically, like, just keep following what you're passionate about. If you want to go the academic route, then get academic qualifications in what you're passionate about. If you want to go the experience route, then go and get experience in what you're passionate about. But just follow that, and it will lead you to doing something that you love. So that's what I did. And I really enjoyed psychology at A level. And I thought, well, I'm going to go and do human psychology. I like the idea of that. I broke up with my then boyfriend. I was going to take a year out, and then I broke up with my boyfriend, and I thought, no, I'm going to go to university, like that. And so managed to get a place 3 clearing, went to uni, got an applied psychology degree in applied psychology and criminology, actually. But specialised in young mammals, and did my dissertation in secure attachment in young mammals. I got a first in my dissertation. If I'm honest, I experimented fairly heavily with drugs during university, but managed to get through anyway and got a 2-1.
Impressive.
And well, you said to be candid, so I thought I would be. And then after university, dabbled in various careers that we don't talk about, because they were all pretty illegal at the time. And then a year after that, didn't really know what to do. So I thought a friend of my dad's recommended that he said, you should do something digital, really. And so I started doing some work for a digital agency, just like basically writing. I've always been very good at writing. And so I was doing some like content writing for them. And then this job came up at the Blue Cross, which was writing like the behaviour advice and that sort of thing for the and doing some of the like more digital marketing type stuff for the animal charity. And I was like, right, I'm dead into that. That's wicked. Like, I did my dissertation on young mammals. I've always wanted to work with animals. This could kind of like push together everything I do. Yeah. So I started working for them, and it was only maybe 2 weeks in. 2 weeks into that I had this brainwave, because I loved bully breeds, and we had loads of bully breeds in, and I was like, I think we should do a campaign called Respectable, and we should be about educating the bully breed owners, because they're the owners that generally come in and blah 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 blah. In order to do that, I had to go down to this strange place that I'd never heard of before, called the Behaviour Unit. And so I went down to Oxford.
This is Burford.
And I walked in there. A Burford, yeah. And I walked in there, and there was a lady called Claire Sallard and a guy called Ryan Neal.
I know both of them. I used to work at the Blue Cross. Yeah.
Oh, really? Ryan is one of my best friends. I speak to
him
lovely,
like,
basically weekly. Like, he's one of my absolute best friends in the whole wide world. And Claire is still a very good friend of mine. I don't speak to her as much as she should, but Ryan I speak to all the time. I adore him. He's just one of the best people I know. But so I walked in there, and my whole brain lit up like a Christmas tree, and I was just like, "Fuck! Why didn't I know this existed? This is it. This is Mecca. Cool. Like, this is where I need to be." And so from then on, I started to kind of like, I can say it now because it doesn't really matter, but I started scheduling fake meetings all the time up in Burford, and actually just going down to the behaviour unit and doing like work experience with them, and like stooging for them and doing as much as I possibly could. And then, I was lucky enough to be able to afford to then do my postgrad while I was there. So I carried on getting experience whilst I was doing it. And whilst I was there and getting experience and doing my postgrad, I became fascinated in the expert witness side of things, like the legal side of things, because partly because I got Arch, I got my pit bull, I got Archie, and partly because we were getting a lot of those type 1 dogs in, and I was sort of seeing what happened, and I just got more and more interested in that. And then I met a horrible man called Roger Mugford, and he offered me a job at a company of animals. And so then I went and worked at a company of animals. I sat next to Chirag for a year, which is lovely. I love Chirag. And we did a bunch of really fun stuff. Like, we went and did what's it called? with the XXX. Britain's Got Talent.
Oh,
Britain's Got Talent with a bunch of chickens, me and Shirag. Pulled a couple of all-nighters training some chickens and did that. And did a whole bunch of really fun training stuff. But also did, I also did loads and loads and loads of assisting for Roger, as well as for a couple of the other expert witnesses, until I'd done enough experience that I could then apply as an expert witness. So that was like my big plan. So then I went and applied for that. I didn't get sacked. Me and Shirag left on the same day, put it that way. And I received some very interesting emails. One day I'm going to publish that from my then boss, saying that I would never make it in the dog training world, and that I should probably find a job that didn't require me to write or read.
Wow.
Yeah. So funny, I did all right myself. But then I left there on a bit of a like sudden like shit, now I don't have a salary, don't know what to do, but I had enough experience. I'd got my expert witness stuff under my belt. I had a couple of good contacts as solicitors who then took me on as their expert witness, so I was able to do that work. And then I started School for Dogs because I thought, right, I'm just gonna see if I can do it. So literally I went out and did exactly what we're saying not to do now, which was found a hall and started doing public classes.
Yeah.
Obviously I had experience like running classes and doing stuff like that already from the previous jobs, but still I did that and started doing behaviour consults, and it just took off, to be honest. I was really lucky. I was living in Brighton. It just took off, and within a year I took on two members of staff because I had more work than I could shake a stick at. I didn't know what to do for the amount of work I had. And then built that up, took on a partner, made the same mistake, didn't do contracts and stuff like that, but took on a partner, and we built the business up until we had 8 members of staff. So it was a nice big beefy business. Did well out of that. Really enjoyed running that. Thoroughly enjoyed running that. Really enjoyed running that business. It was my baby for a while. And then I got and then a friend of mine who is a cat behaviourist messaged me and said to me, look, I'm pregnant, so I can't do this TV show that I'm meant to be on. You're the only other person I know that can do cats. Is there any way that you fancy doing it? I think you'd be good on TV. And I was like, yeah, right. So went down to Bristol and went and sat there and did a show called Cats versus Dogs, where I had to train the owners of a cat, and they had to go up against, as a challenge, the owners of a Dalmatian. They both had to train the dog and the cat 3 tricks, and I had to like judge it, and I had to present all this information about like the way cats were domesticated differently to dogs were domesticated, and why that changes their learning and all that kind of stuff. So did that, and then while I was there, the production manager came over to me and said, "Is this the first TV you've ever done?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "You're really good at it. I'd really like to put you forward for this other show. Do you enjoy it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've really enjoyed it." And he was like, "Well, can I put you forward for this other show called Rescue Dog Superdog?" So then they put me forward for Rescue Dog Superdog. Like 2 days later, they came down and filmed a sizzle reel at the clinic that I built a clinic for the old business. So then I got Rescue Dog Superdog, and that took me out on the road for about 6 months away from the business. So in the end, I gave the business to my then business partner. I was meant to sell it to her, but she stole it from me because I didn't make those contracts that we talked about. They're so important. We'll not be making a mistake again.
Yeah.
And so then she took that, and I then me and Nando got together at that point when I was doing Rescue Dog Superdog, and we. Steve Mann came to me and asked me whether or not he asked me to run a dog yoga thingy. 1 second. So previous to that, I missed a bit, which is that during the course of this, with Archie, I started to develop this protocol, this dog yoga protocol, which was just something I was messing around with. I've always been like my dad used to describe me as an original thinker, and I've always been someone who thinks outside the box a little bit, maybe because I'm neurodivergent, whatever they like to call it. People all know neurodivergent, to be honest, but anyway. And so I came up with this protocol that I was using for Arch, and one of my vets asked me about it, and she was like, "This is amazing, the change that I've seen him in since you've been doing all this stuff differently." And she was like, I've got a German Shepherd, I think, that I'd really like you to work with. So I worked with this German Shepherd on the same protocol. Now, the German Shepherd had hip dysplasia, hell surprise. And so I worked on it in a very specific way to help with the hip dysplasia. And I then came out of this idea and I said to them, look, we could use this protocol to train specific movements for this dog because it didn't like to be handled at all. And so we could get the dog to do its own physio. And so we started doing this. And so we used the yoga protocol to train these particular actions and postures and stuff to help the dog do its physical, to do its protocol. And then that particular vet said to me, look, can you write this up for me? Like write up the protocols and stuff that you're using. She's like, I'll pay you to do it so that we can have it as almost like a little manual so that we can use it for other dogs that come in the same thing. So I think it'd be really useful. So I started writing that manual. And then I thought to myself, why am I doing this and not publishing it? Like, why am I wasting all my time doing this and not publishing? So I just literally went through my bookcase, picked out my 3 favorite books, found who the publisher was, wrote to the publisher and said, look, I'm writing this for the vets. Would you be interested in publishing it? All 3 of them came back and said yes. So then I had them like kind of fight off between them. Went with one of them, who then said they'll publish it, got it done, wrote it, published it. And then Steve Mann, who was the head of the IMDT at the time, he still is, came to me and said to me, do you mind doing a yoga thing for the dog training weekend? Just like a section on dog yoga. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. So I went down and did that with him. What I really noticed he added me to the group, to like the Facebook group. And I really noticed that there was a lot of behaviour questions on there that were being really badly answered. So people who had learned to dog train through the IMDT didn't know any behaviour stuff. And so I went to Steve and I said to him, have you ever thought of doing like a behaviour version of the dog training stuff, like the IMDT stuff, but a behaviour version so that you're training your trainers to do the behaviour stuff rather than, because at the moment they're asking these questions and the answers aren't great. And there's obviously a gap there that needs to be filled. And we talked about it, had a couple of meetings, and he was like, yeah, I really fancy this. He was like, do you fancy writing it? And I was like, yeah, I'd happily do that. So then I wrote a separation anxiety seminar and a resource guarding seminar and a couple of others as well. I can't remember what they were. And then we came up with this idea for the IMDTB, which he then put forward. So then I was doing seminars for the IMDTB, Nando was doing seminars for the IMDT, and then we both got Rescue Dog to Super Dog. We then got together during that, and then at some point we just said why don't we do this ourselves? But why don't we start running seminars, just me and you, and we'll do it together? It'd be more fun. Like you say, it's nice to work together with someone, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when SOCs first started, it was we just did seminars around the country. We did a predation one, we did a resource guarding one, we did a whole bunch of conferences abroad. We toured America, we went to Australia, a bunch of different gigs in Europe, and we just like did lots of presenting. And then we came out of this idea, actually it's quite funny, we came out of this idea, we were like, what's really annoying is how poorly the science is being taught. So basically during our journeys when we were in the car, I'd gone the academic route and he hadn't. So he would say to me something like that about Skinner or about Pavlov, and I'd be like, no, that's not actually true. Like, having been taught it in human psychology, there was never actually a bell. It wasn't a bell, it was this. And we talked all through, and he was like, the amount of myths that are being taught in dog training when it comes to this science is crazy. So we were like, why don't we do like a little online course? This is how the whole of SOCs started, was we were going to do this little online course that was just going to teach people about learning theory, right? That's all it was. That's all SOCs was going to do. That's the only online bit we were going to do. And then we had this idea that we were going to do that, and that we kind of like put that on the back burner while we were filming a different show for Teach My Pet. And then at the end of Teach My Pet, we were going to America, so we didn't have time to do the workshops that we wanted to run as part of the TV show for dog trainers. And so we wanted to find a trainer that could do that for us. We went and I had to judge the Bull Terrier class, and he had to judge the Tricks class at this big Welsh show. In the Tricks class, the person who won it was Dean. We watched Dean do this really good thing with his dog, and we were like, he's great. He's a great dog trainer. Like, where's he from? Spoke to him afterwards. He's like, well, actually, I'm not a professional dog trainer. I'm just a dog owner. I just really love doing it. And we were like, man, you're like, what you did there is sick. And he was like, well, actually, funnily enough, I've just applied to come on one of your courses. And so he had applied to come on one of our courses. We then let him on to a load of our courses, trained him up, got him to do those workshops. Whilst he was doing those workshops, he decided that he wanted to become a dog trainer, and we saw a lot of potential in him, the fact that he had been in business before. So he did his MBA or whatever it's called, and was in business before that. And we thought he has a lot of the skills that we don't have. And we said to him, do you want to come on board just with this online project that we're doing? It's just this tiny little course. We started filming that tiny little course. But then every time we filmed it, we were like, oh, we should really be teaching people this. We should really be teaching them. And then in the end, it ended up being the whole of Puppy Lab. And we created the whole of Puppy Lab. We all gave up work, other work, and just focused on that for a year with no earnings, just on the punt that we thought it'd do well because there wasn't anything else like it in the market. And then we were lucky enough that it did do really well. And we said, look, as long as we earn, I can't remember how much it was, but we had like a figure that we had put in. We said, like, as long as it earns this amount, then we'll do another course afterwards. And it earned that amount. It way more than that amount. So we then did 30 days of School of Canine Science, and then from there we just created a business, and then that was that business, and that's how all that happened, really.
Amazing.
It was very organic. It was all just very organic. Opportunities arose. I'm someone who says yes to everything because, like, I just think these things happen. You only live once, and if it sparks my interest, then I'll find a way of making it happen.
But a theme of all of that for me is the collaborations that you formed throughout. That's how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, collaborate, the networking, relationships, like talking to people,
and
100%. And like, as you know from probably talking to me, I'm incredibly social. I love talking to people. For me, real knows real, and you sit with someone for 10 minutes and you can tell whether or not they're bullshitting, whether or not there's someone who's giving off this fake impression, whether or not there's a different motivation there, or whether or not they're just an open, real person who's going to just go, there you go, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I want out of this. And those are the people that I'm looking for. Those are the people that I want in my life. People who are positive, who, when negative things happen, either just shake it off and push it away, or else go, how can we turn this into a good thing?
Yeah.
You know, and people who can do and who do want to do. And you just surround yourself with people like that, and then you end up having all these different ideas and bouncing off each other, and it's just nice.
That's it. It's so important, isn't it? And I, again, kind of like drawing it back to the whole reason we're wanting to do this is so we can create that positive community to go, this, you know, there is this gap and we want to help fill it, because we do love working with dogs. We love working with the people aspect. We love getting to talk to people like you. We love the social side of everything, and actually just having those open conversations. And there just genuinely doesn't seem to be a place that exists for that. And it's
like people have become scared of telling the truth. And I don't really understand it. Like, and I try so hard. And I was talking earlier about those boundaries I put in. Generally speaking, I try and see myself on social media, on like the pages and stuff now. I see myself as a content creator. And it's not about engagement for me. If you look at the vast majority, like when I posted the reel of me and Belle Christmas shopping together with Carlos and Fiasco, and I got all that jip about her dog wearing a prong collar, I don't really engage in it anymore. I don't even read most of those comments, if I'm honest. Like, I'll get messages from friends with screenshots going, have you read what fucking so-and-so's just written about you? Like, you see it, and I'm just like, no, I just don't read it. I genuinely speaking, I really do live my life looking for things that I like.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I look for things that I like. And if there's something that I don't like or makes me feel a certain type of way, I'll try and get it out of my life. I just don't want it in my life anymore.
Yeah.
Such a good way to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think you've got to see social media like that. And I think that if you're able to do that, then I think as humans, we just have to say to ourselves, it should always be about truth. I get a lot of dog trainers who say to me, like, I feel really shit because I've just advised my client to do something that, if I'm honest, I would never do with my dog. And I'd say, well, what would you do with your dog? And you go, well, I just tell them to like I'll just tell them not to do it. Like about 2 weeks ago, I got if I'm going to be more specific about it, I got an email. It's a good example of this, of a trainer who said to me, I've got a client whose dog's counter surfs, and I've just put them on a differential reinforcement schedule of other behaviour. So they're using a treatment train, they've bought a treatment train, they're putting it in the kitchen, and they're doing it on time contingents, like you said. So they're doing like 30 seconds and then a minute. As long as the dog doesn't counter surf, it gets a treat. If it does counter surf, then it doesn't get a treat. And she said, but if I'm honest, I can see this is going to take weeks for the dog to realise what's going on. And I feel shit, she said, because I would never do that with my dogs. And I said, well, how did you fix your dogs when counter surfing? She said, I just got them by the collar when they did it and said, no, put them on the floor again. And I said, and why didn't you say that to your client? She said, because I feel like I'm not a positive trainer if I say that. And like, I'm like, people have got to stop being hung up, not just on the positive training thing, but just on any of these labels, any of these pressures to be a certain way, and just be honest. Yeah. Like above everything else, be yourself and be honest.
Yeah.
Love it.
I think that's like, the best bit of advice anyone can give, actually. So with that then, let's go. So aside from the honesty thing, or maybe that is the honesty thing, would that be then your one biggest tip then to give to the dog profession at the moment in terms of falling in love back in their business, doing something that they love, that they're good at, all of that? What would be the one thing that you should say everyone should be concentrating on the most?
Oh, those are two different questions for me. So everyone should be concentrating on being good at what your clients want. Yeah. If you are not good at what your clients want, then one of two things has to change. Either what you're good at needs to change, so you need to learn the skills to become good at it, or what your clients want needs to change, in which case you need to be marketing to different clients. Like one of those two things has to change. Either the clients have to change or the skills have to change. Yeah. But you need to be skillful in what your clients want. Yeah. You need to find clients that want you to do what you want to do. Right? So that's what people should be concentrating on working out who the market is, what they want to do, and becoming really shit hot at that. Yeah. But in terms of my one tip for people, without a doubt, it would be to wake up every morning and spend your day concentrating on the things that you like, not the things that you don't like.
Love it.
Because I think if everybody does that, then people will stop criticizing each other too. And then you won't have to, like, the confidence levels of everybody will go up, and everything gets better when you start doing that. Wake up every day and just concentrate, like, look around for things and collect in your brain things that you like. Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. Collect it all up, and you'll become like a better person. You'll become a more positive person. You'll become better at business. You'll become better at everything. Just collect the things that you like in your brain instead of collecting the things that you don't like in your brain. And in terms of specifically the dog behaviour and training industry, if everybody could be 20% more authentic and 20% more honest, the whole of the industry would change for the better.
Yeah. Love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One last question for you then. Who do you know that would make an awesome guest on this podcast to spread our message even further?
Well, if you haven't already thought of him, then Craig Ogilvie for sure. Like, he's definitely someone who you should get on here. He's been doing a lot of mentoring stuff that's really, really good. What he does is almost leans more towards life coaching, I think, than anything. So I think he'd be a really cool person to have on there. And the other person, without a doubt, she'd jump on the chance, would be Kelly Dunbar. She does mentorship, and she's got a lot of really, really strong opinions about the industry. She's been in it for 12 years longer than I have. And I think she's watched it from the side of, like, obviously Ian Dunbar and Sirius and all that side of stuff, and then also from the sports side of stuff, and then also from like mentoring new trainers coming up. So I think she would have a lot of really, really interesting opinions and stuff. So.
Yeah. Amazing.
Thank you.
Love it. Well, thank you ever so much for joining us today. I've absolutely loved this. It's been great getting to see the insight in your journey and everything. I think it's just
I feel like I've been to therapy.
That's what it's about. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. But no, I really do appreciate your time.
I always come away from these, right? Or every podcast I've ever done, including this one, I always come away from these going, I really shouldn't have said that shit.
Oh no, you should have. You should have on this one. Ooh. Definitely.
Yeah, no, this is all about.
I never regret. Honesty, authenticity.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Been lovely to talk to you guys.
Yeah, and you. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.